Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm here again with another video addressing a very serious public health problem that affects 752 million people worldwide. Now, have you ever gone to a medical institution and you are prescribed certain antibiotics to take against certain bacterial infection, and in the course of treatment you might feel a little bit better, some people might not, and you realize that in the end of the antibiotic treatment you are still not feeling fine? Your condition seems to stay the same and it looks like nothing has changed from the way you were before you went to the hospital. What could be the problem? Well, in this video I'm going to tell you what that is. I'm also going to tell you the causes of this kind of scenario, and also what you can do to prevent this from happening. We are talking about antibiotic resistance. So take note, humans or animals are not resistant to antibiotic. Bacteria are resistant to antibiotic. So that's a very important point to note. Now we are going to, in this video, talk to you about what antibiotic resistance is, the causes of antibiotic resistance, the prevention of antibiotic resistance, and if somebody already has certain microorganisms or an infection caused by microorganisms like bacteria, and the bacteria happens to be resistant to a certain antibiotic, well, we'll tell you what to do medically such that you get rid of the antibiotic resistance. So stay put guys, all of these is going to be unfolding in this video. Pay attention. So our first point guys, what is antibiotic resistance? Well, before we talk about antibiotic resistance, we are going to talk about what antibiotics are. So antibiotics are medicines that are used to prevent and treat bacterial infections. Now, resistance to antibiotics occurs when the bacteria changes its response to the antibiotic such that it is no longer effective against the microorganism or against the bacteria. It can no longer kill the bacteria that it was meant to kill. So the bacteria survives even in the presence of the antibiotic. That's what we call antibiotic resistance. Now, this resistance can occur either naturally or artificially. Naturally, because there are certain environmental conditions that enhance gene transfer between bacteria, and so some of these genes that can be transferred between bacteria can be resistant genes. That means certain genes that are resistant to certain antibiotics get transferred from one bacteria to the next, and the bacteria that receives the gene which is resistant automatically becomes resistant to the antibiotic. It can also occur artificially through human activity. Well, the one about human activity we'll talk later in this video. So now we need you to know something about antibiotic resistance, because some of these bacteria are resistant to antibiotic. They are very difficult to eradicate, difficult to get rid of. There are some disadvantages of antibiotic resistance. It can lead to higher medical costs because the bacteria is very difficult to treat due to its resistance. It can also lead to prolonged stay in the hospital because the medical personnel will be figuring out ways to use a different antibiotic in order to eradicate the infection you're suffering from. And these resistant bacteria often lead to high mortality rate. A lot of people die as a result of not being able to get rid of a particular bacterial infection. So guys, we're getting into the second point. What causes antibiotic resistance and how can we prevent antibiotic resistance from occurring? Now, antibiotic resistance is mostly caused by human behavior. 75% of antibiotic resistance is caused by human behavior. Yeah, you heard that right. When antibiotics are gotten for human or animal use without the prescription of a certified medical personnel, then we can get antibiotics which will not work. So when you get an antibiotic without a prescription, then you are more probable to get the wrong antibiotic. So always make sure before getting an antibiotic, you are prescribed by a certified medical personnel. Now, there are certain bacteria that are becoming very resistant due to human behavior. We have infections like pneumonia caused by a gram-positive bacteria that occurs in chains. We also have tuberculosis. It's an infection that's becoming more and more resistant. We have certain bacterial infections that affect the gastrointestinal tract. They call them Enterobacteriaceae, such as Salmonella, Shigella, Yersinia pestis, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, Proteus vulgaris. These are infections or bacterial infections that are becoming more and more resistant due to human behavior, the way they use antibiotics. So try to always make sure that if you're suffering from a particular bacterial infection, seek medical attention. Let the right antibiotic be prescribed to you, so that if you're taking a particular antibiotic, you know you're taking it against this particular infection and you're sure it's going to work. Never go and get antibiotics for yourself without a prescription. Another human behavior that leads to resistance or antibiotic resistance is failure to respect the antibiotic treatment duration. Now, let's take for instance that an antibiotic treatment course is prescribed for 10 days, and let's say you take it just for 5 days, and because you're feeling much better, you decide to keep aside the rest of the medications or the rest of the antibiotic that was prescribed to you. What is going to happen? Here's what is going to happen. Normally, the way antibiotics act, or the pharmacology behind the way antibiotics act, is that they target certain proteins that are found on the external covering of bacteria or the cell wall of bacteria to be able to effectuate their pharmacological properties. Now, if you take antibiotics that have been prescribed for you to take for 10 days, you take just for 5 days and you stop, what you have done is that you've killed about half of the bacteria and half is still remaining. Now, those bacteria that are remaining, because you didn't complete the other 5 days duration of treatment, those bacteria have studied how the antibiotic works. Now they can produce certain proteins to cover themselves and prevent the antibiotic from working against them anymore. So if you are supposed to take this treatment for 10 days and you took just for 5 days, the remaining bacteria that you left untreated have studied the mechanism of action of the antibiotic, such that even if you take that antibiotic again, there is a possibility that the bacteria are already resistant to the antibiotic. So in no time, the bacteria you left are going to multiply and start causing you clinical manifestations again all over. And this time around, if you take the antibiotic which was originally prescribed to you, which might have been sensitive, it will now not do anything. That means the bacteria now will have gained some resistance against the antibiotic. So this is another point that makes bacteria to be resistant to antibiotics, when duration of treatment with antibiotics is not respected. There is another human behavior or activity that can result in antibiotic resistance. Well, we've spoken about the duration of treatment with antibiotic. If it's not respected, then antibiotic resistance can occur. Now, sometimes we might respect the duration, but unfortunately the interval between the doses is not respected. This one can also lead to antibiotic resistance. Let's just take for example that you are prescribed antibiotics to take 12 hourly, let's say to take 8 a.m. in the morning, and also the next dose of the day is to be taken at 8 p.m. Now, you take the 8 a.m. dose and you skip the 8 p.m. dose and continue the next morning. What have you done? You have disrupted the antibiotic dose interval. So when you skip your dose or you fail to take it at the interval that you are supposed to take the antibiotic, this is what it does. It gives ample time to the bacteria to create certain coatings around its cell wall. Now, because the way antibiotic acts, they target certain receptor sites on the cell wall of bacteria. If these receptor sites are modified, it's just like a lock and a key. So if you take a key and you place into a lock and try to open it, because the structure of the key is meant to fit into the lock so well that it can unlock the properties and open the lock, it will definitely do that. Now take for instance, the antibiotic is just like the key. Now it's going to fit into the lock, which are receptor sites that are found on the cell wall of bacteria. Now when that key fits into that lock, it opens it or kind of breaks open the cell wall of the bacteria, and now most bacteria die when their cell wall is exposed and their content flows out. Now here is what resistance does. When that key, which is the antibiotic, reaches on the cell wall of the bacteria and tries to fit in the receptor site, when you've given ample time for the bacteria to modify those receptor sites, when you are coming to fit the key there, it can no longer fit. You get the point? So the key or the antibiotic, which is compared to the key, can no longer fit into the lock, which is the receptor site found on the cell wall of bacteria. So it just goes and it can't do anything like before, because you've given ample time to the bacteria. Because you're supposed to take your evening dose, you didn't take it at 8 p.m. That bacteria has modified the receptor sites, and so the antibiotic, which is compared to the key, can no longer fit. This is what brings about resistance to antibiotic. I hope it was clear, guys. Now that we've spoken about the different causes of antibiotic resistance, what can you do if you realize that you have been taking antibiotics for quite some time and you've not had any positive response? What can you do? Well, you need to contact your healthcare provider. Your medical healthcare provider is going to be able to provide or request a laboratory test. It's a very important medical procedure in microbiology. They call it culture and sensitivity. This is a test that isolates the exact microorganism responsible for your discomfort. This culture and sensitivity procedure is capable of telling you the exact antibiotic that can be able to get rid of the infection you are suffering from. So it's a very important medical procedure in microbiology. In cases where someone has had resistance for some time, the only way to go about to get the exact antibiotic that will be responsible for clearing the infection or eradicating the bacterial infection which you have been taking other antibiotics and is not responding is through culture and sensitivity. So guys, that's what I had in store for you. Antibiotic resistance, causes, prevention, and solution. If you loved the video, then don't hesitate to subscribe and click the notification icon such that anytime I upload a video, you'll be able to be notified about it. Until next time, guys, stay blessed.